So hi, I'm good, and I'm going to show you my Flameblast character. This character is Selfcast Flameblast, which does a lot of wacky things. Like, for one, I pretty much have to get Vaal Pact to deal with Reflect. If I don't get that, I will pretty much, it's a guaranteed one-shot to yourself if you hit any decent-sized pack with any sort of extra damage types of things on them, like Shock, or for instance, multiple curses. So pretty much have to get Vaal Pact. And if you get Vaal Pact, it's really hard to do it as life. There's a lot of issues there, so I went CI to do that. But the problem is that Vaal Pact and CI are on complete opposite sides of the tree. And on top of that, I also have to get the Ghost Reaper node over here, as well as a little bit of a couple of ES nodes. So getting all of that gets the build up to about 80 or so points without anything else. Just getting Vaal Pact and CI is really, really expensive to do. And one of the other problems is that now all your auras and all your skills have to be cast off of mana. And the problem with Flameblast, especially if it's linked up, it costs a lot of mana. So Flameblast over here has a mana cost of 43. And that it has a cast time of 0.25 seconds, which means I need about 160 regen a second to actually cast Flameblast itself. I could potentially drop an aura, and then I would have enough mana pool bank to cast it instead. But because of the nature of the build, I need some defense, and Grace provides a lot of it. And I pretty much have to run Clarity, and Discipline is just more life, so giving up any of those, kind of difficult to do. So I took a lot of these mana nodes, or mana reduction for aura nodes, so I can actually run all these auras, and I have a pitiful amount of mana left, but I have enough mana regen to actually cast Flameblast. On top of that, I have mana regen on a lot of pieces of gear. There is a ring you could use, it's called Dream Fragments, which makes you immune to being frozen. I hate this ring. So I don't use it. Instead of using some Wanderlust boots to deal with the freeze, because if you go CI, the elemental status ailments, their durations are judged against your base life pool as if you did not have Chaos Inoculation. So I would have about an effective 800 life pool. This also does some other crazy things, like I get stunned a lot. As you can see, my build didn't bother taking Unwavering Stance. And that's because the Cast When Stunned gem exists now. So you can actually utilize stun to your own advantage. And this skill actually has a pretty good failsafe built in for if you get stun locked. Because usually if I'm channeling the skill, I'll get stun locked about here. And if I completely get stun locked and take a lot of damage, I don't cast Flameblast for a little while and it automatically explodes for me. And because I have a Vaal Pact and Life Leech on it, it'll pretty much guaranteed to restore my entire life pool in just one little blast. What else? Let's see. See if I can... So, I did something else that's really strange too. I went up to the top of the tree to grab static blows. If you can see, there's little blue circles that are kind of, yeah, there's little blue elemental proliferation circles right next to the red ones. The blue ones are actually the shock proliferating. The red circles are ignite proliferating. That's because I linked Flameblast to added lightning damage. So on top of it causing ignites, that are really, really strong ignites, it also causes shocks to the whole group of enemies for increased damage over time. It adds quite a bit of damage. Like, I have pretty much no damage nodes besides just the various like little keystones I really need, like static blows. Yeah, the only real damage node I have is this little cluster right here, and that's it. There's no damage anywhere on the tree. It's just the Searing Touch and not much damage. And apparently, that's enough to make Flameblast work. This build is very strange in the way it does damage, especially in groups. Because if you are in a group, usually you'll run into a pack of mobs and then everyone starts immediately doing damage. And usually they do AoE damage because there's a big fucking pack of mobs, and AoE is kind of how you deal with big packs of fucking mobs. But Flameblast, you just kind of stand in the middle, right, and cast it. And by the time everything's dead, it goes off, and then everything dies, which means it kind of didn't do its job, simply from the delay and how long it takes to set up. Granted, if you are running with a pretty low DPS group, and the mobs don't die by the time... 17%. If they don't die by the time Flameblast goes off, Flameblast is pretty much guaranteed to kill off everything else. But to me it feels really, really strange to use in groups, because by the time it's set up to do the type of damage I need it to do, which is really good AoE damage against really like white and magic packs of mobs, they're usually already dead, so... I don't know. It works really well if you happen to be running with a person who can fill in the single target damage role. So a person using Flameblast, like this build, can go in and shoot down all the adds, and then a guy who has a really good single target can come in and kill the rares. Yeah. So I also have Elemental Equilibrium, and to proc it I'm using Lightning Warp. I could use Shock Nova or some other skill, but because I don't have an actual spare slot for a Lightning Warp gem, because occasionally you will need to teleport around, and since I kind of hate weapon swapping to do it, it's really irritating. Like weapon swap, then use a Leap Slam, or weapon swap, and then use Lightning Warp. I just use Lightning Warp to proc Elemental Equilibrium, and I just linked it to Elemental Proliferation because it can also cause shock, because it does lightning damage. So it causes shock, it causes Elemental Equilibrium to go off. And it kind of sends me right into big packs of mobs, which is really dumb, not gonna lie. What the fuck? So... that's something you can do. So, as you can see, I have a lot of stuff linked to cast on stun. One of them is Arctic Breath. Arctic Breath is really, really nice. It simply causes chilled ground, and if an enemy is standing in chilled ground, like if they happen to be next to you, causing you to stun, it slows them down without overriding a curse, as if you used temp chains on it. So, Arctic Breath on a trigger gem actually has guaranteed freeze, or chill duration. Whereas if I just hit them with cold damage, potentially the mobs are cold resistant. The chilled ground, or the icy ground, completely overrides anything like that. It always applies chill. Doesn't last for very long, but I don't need it to. So as you know, as you can see, I didn't take Iron Reflexes, and that's because of how Cast on Stun works. If I take big hits, you're more likely to get stunned. If I took Iron Reflexes, I get hit more often, but the hits are usually less damaging because of how armor works. So I would essentially take the same amount of damage, maybe a little bit more, or maybe a little bit less, but I wouldn't get stunned as often, which really helps improve my survivability with things like Molten Shell. So if it gets stunned, Molten Shell goes up, and then it can explode, and because I have Vaal Pact, it can restore a large chunk of life if enough mobs happen to surround me. One of the really interesting things is that because you're static, Smoke Mine actually works really well for this skill, because you can run forward Smoke Mine, and now you have the blinding cloud around our location. So the mobs there are blinded, and it gives them a 75% chance to miss. So, you know, with this specific skill setup, one of the interesting things to do, if I can find a good place to set it up with, is to set down a mine, Lightning Warp in, cause Elemental Equilibrium, and then potentially a shock as well, and then detonate it, teleport back, cause a smoke cloud at that location, and now you're protected against melee attacks, because anything that attempts to attack you in that time is blinded, on top of you being able to evade it. And that's actually really, really defensive. And it also improves the damage with if you use Lightning Warp in that scenario. So this is effectively a 0 damage node build. And apparently that's enough to do stuff. Who knew? Flameblast just does a lot of damage. Anything else I need to cover? That's about it, I guess. I guess I'm gonna just run around and see how fast I can clear the map. Because you know I got that ignition condition. Flameblast actually has a lot of stages. Per stage it gets a pretty big damage increase. It's over 100%. So it just kind of adds on damage. At 10 stacks it's like 11 times the tooltip damage. So effectively at full stacks this thing hits for around 7,000-ish. A little over 7,000 top-end fire damage. My old fire trap build, the one from way back in the day, that had top-end hits of about 6,000 with a lot of damage nodes. So this has more potential damage than my old weird fire trap build, which makes me think this is actually a really good skill to use on totems instead of like on how this character uses it. Because self-casting it, while it does have higher burn potential, because if you use it on a totem, it does get the totem reduction, because totems have a 50% less damage for all the skills you use on them. So this does have higher burn potential, but I don't think it needs it, because at 10 stacks, it annihilates pretty much everything anyways. So it's, Flameblast is a very interesting skill.